Data with Dre. In this video, you'll be learning how to create a dynamic secondary horizontal axis. As you click a pivot table slicer, not only will your column series be dynamic, but your plotted points along the secondary horizontal axis will be as well. Stay tuned. Let's level up together.
Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Andre. I'm excited to share my first video, which will be one of many within the Microsoft Excel, Power BI, and Power Apps environments. So here, what we're looking at, and the topic of this video is a dynamic secondary horizontal axis. So I've set up a pivot chart here. It's got province, branch, previous revenue, the percentage of the total, so the sales into the total revenue for the previous period, the current revenue, and then the current revenue into the total for that period. So about 3 years ago, there was a time where it came out that you could create a block of data that was dynamic using a spill range, and then when you clicked on the slicer, it would recognize the new series. So that's what this is using. It's out of scope for this video, so I'm not going to show that process, but what I do want to show is when you have these columns and then you go to add a secondary horizontal axis, which is going to be my percentage of the total, how you can make that dynamic. Because if you have multiple series within a dynamic chart like this, you kind of lose that functionality if you can't also get your percentages to be plotted over the right bars. So I'm going to add that to this chart here now. So I want to grab the previous percentage of the total. So I'm going to add that. I'll be here with these two. And I'm also going to add the current revenue percentage of total. And there we go. So I've added that, and it thinks they're bars. We're going to change that. So if we go up to the chart design type and change the chart type, I want a combo where these are going to be plotted as scatter. Oops. And I want them on my secondary axis. Okay, perfect. So, well, almost perfect, because it's plotting these right in the center, but I want the dots to correspond with the current period. So the blue being the previous and the red being the current. So I'm going to change these colors accordingly as well. So now that we know that the percentage is going to correspond with that previous color, and same with this current percentage of the total, that will correspond with the red color here. So ideally how you would set these up is in the setting for scatter, it's going to have this x-axis value, and when you enter a number here, it's going to move it along this timeline. Now right now this timeline isn't showing up because I haven't added that to the axis titles yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Sorry, not the titles, the actual axis itself, secondary horizontal. So we probably want this to be a bigger range, because essentially when we enter a number here, it's going to be plotting along the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. It'll just be easier if this is a bigger range. So I'm going to change that range to the maximum of 10. And you can see as a result, all these got shifted here because they don't have any number assigned yet. And maybe I want to show my 0.5s as well. There you go, I can do that. That way it's just a little bit easier to look vertically and see where that axis is going to plot. So generally what I like to do is set up an axis here. So I can do that where my previous axis, let's call it previous percentage axis, and current percentage axis. So I can have multiple points here. So if I then choose here for the previous axis, and I set it to this cell, and I can set my current axis to this cell as well. And so those jumped off the page there, but we're gonna see when I enter a number here. So roughly I want that previous axis to show as 2.5 there, and then 3.5. Okay, so that's roughly what we want. And then for here, I'm gonna set this for 7. Oops. Looks like I didn't set my range to go deep enough. There we go. And I'll change my current one as well. There. Okay. So I set that for 7. See, it needs a little bit more, so I can go 7.2. That looks good. And then I can go 8.2. So that looks pretty good there. Now that I have that saved, or I know what I want those to be, I'm gonna just copy them here because I'm gonna show you what's gonna happen here. Yeah, it's gonna no longer recognize the dynamic nature of my chart because I've included a range outside of the chart. But let's see if I can use those numbers and just hard code them. So I guess what I'd want that to be is 2.5 and 7.2. Here it is 3.5 and 8.2. Okay, so those are back. All right, so we're all learning together here. Okay, so I referenced a point outside of the block, which is why it changed from being dynamic to then not recognizing when I made my slicer selection. But herein lies the problem. These are lined up perfectly, right? But then if I wanted these to also be dynamic, they're not going to be dynamic. They're still stuck to that 2.5 and that 3.5 that I had set. So to keep these dynamic, we're going to use that same logic here, that if it's part of an entire spill range, then it's going to accept the dynamicness of it. And also, we need a lookup. We need a lookup because we're going to change from 1 series to 2 series. Okay, so that is why I have this table here. With a previous axis, a current axis, and a number of series. And we're going to actually add that to this dynamic formula. So these I know for my two different series should be 2.5. I'll copy these values into here. And this previous and this current is probably not going to be the right numbers. But the first part that we want to do is we want to be able to attach that to this. So how we can do that is by using an H-stack. Or I guess the best way to bring these numbers in is to use a lookup here. But a lookup is only going to return one row, so we can actually use filter. And the logic for the parameter that we're going to filter this table on is going to be based on the amount of rows that it counts in the pivot table. I mean, it could also use that logic here too. But I'll do it based off the pivot table rows. So here, I'm going to add, so this is going to become part of my H-stack. But what I'm also going to add to that H-stack is then the filter logic. For this array. And I'm going to include if the count of this, or sorry, it's just going to be the data, the count of these two. So when I have only one row there, it's going to equal 1, and it's just going to grab this top row. When it equals 2, it's going to grab these two rows. So let's just see if that works. It grabbed not availables because I didn't add any titles to this array yet. So because this array is looking for titles, I actually want to do H-stack of this, filter this row, but first I want to V-stack my titles first, and that's going to be the previous axis and the current axis. Now really, so this is row 1, and this is row 2, and potentially 3. I want to V-stack this H-stack. Okay, there we go. If I click on a province here, so now you're going to see the labels dynamically change from the 1 series that is recognizing that this is Midtown, and it's got 17% on the previous, and it's got 20% on the current. As I click into a province that has 2 labels, then it's now going to look up these 2 rows that are in my secondary horizontal axis table and dynamically feed them into that initial block of data, and leave these which makes the labels, or plots them dynamically. So there is going to be an issue here with where the labels sit. That can kind of be played around a little bit by moving these labels individually, or again changing what the axis is here. So I have all my labels in a good position. There's going to have to be some playing around with that, and maybe that's one of the cons of having the dynamic lookup, is there's nothing built into Excel that's going to move these labels out of the place or make them kind of dodge each other so they're not overlapping. That is a function that you do have available in Power BI. Excel's just not there, and they're probably not ever going to make it be, because, well, they have other tools now. But that is how you can make that secondary horizontal axis dynamic. One thing I would suggest is, once you have these labels here across the top, you probably don't need to keep them. It just kind of clutters things. So if you just change the labels to none, it will just turn that to a line. You know it's there. If you need to adjust it or adjust your numbers here on the access points, but that makes a clean table there. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Today, we learned to keep our workflow dynamic and fully utilize the spill array so we could take advantage of the dynamic secondary horizontal axis. Way to level up. Let's initiate shutdown.
Mission completed.